Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it may be, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in to a Link to the Past Randomizer uh, League. Season 2, Week 2, Ambrosia, Defeat Ganon Goal. You are tuned into SpeedGaming 3. I am Eudaimonistic, joined today by Irritable Penguin. Penguin, how you doing today?
I am doing quite well. Very excited to see yet another Ambrosia race. Going to be a good time.
And for those of you out there who have never seen an ambrosia seed or wondering what in the world that even means, well, I guess the dictionary definition of that word is the food of the gods, possibly a reference to the Japanese title for this game, Zelda no Densetsu Kamigami no Triforce, which means Triforce of the gods, actually. But other than that, I mean, maybe it's just the fact that you get a free boots hint from the uncle. It's a standard open, as well as a guaranteed item on every single boss.
So what that's going to mean for our runners is a very different way of routing through dungeons. Eastern Palace, for example, if they grab that first chest and it's a big key, they get 2 items out of the other chest. They know they just have to go to the boss. They don't have to bother going into that another big key room.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun to see if anybody forgets about this, because that's a very easy thing to just kind of autopilot and not remember, and potentially full clear a lot of things you don't need to at all. And it does change the weighting of certain dungeons depending on, whether or not it feels like a good play to do. Skull Woods, for example, 2 items. Very easy to know that you just got to kill Mothula and find one other thing.
That it is, but I've noticed with a couple of the races that Skullwood seems to be the one that hangs people up simply because most runners tend to take a look at it and see it almost as an overworld check for that front half.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how these two handle it. Today on stream for you, we have 2 teams. Beard Force 1, who is on the board with 1 victory so far, against the Titans Mitts with a victory as well to their name. The 2 teams represented by DarkShadows59 from Beard Force 1 and SailorNep from the Titans Mitts. So we'll get to see if either of these 2 are going to pull further ahead.
So what are we going to have in Link's house here?
Our uncle friend telling us that we have our boots in the Palace of Darkness, so it may be a while before we end up dashing through the overworld, but we at least know where we're going for it.
It'll be interesting to see with that specific hint, once they get Dark World access, if they make a beeline for Pod or if they continue with their standard routing.
Yeah, because it might just make sense, depending on our item configuration, to completely forego the boots for quite a while. Some situations call for it. A highlight here of the rain state that you only see in standard mode is that there is no opportunity to pull on any kind of trees or anything, so no need to kill extra enemies. Our runners did not pick up a sign on the way.
We just get a piece of heart off Funkel. See what we get out of the chest here. Bombs is always nice to see when you're in the escape. You know you're going to be able to get that item out of the back, the 3 items out of the back without having to come back with a glove later.
And even less reason to be trying to kill enemies. So at this point, their boomerang already equipped will actually make a really great time save if they're smart about using it throughout the rest of this escape.
Absolutely. And we'll also see that despite not having a lamp on them, they will have a cone in the castle basement here that will be static throughout the entire seed for them. So even if they were to not be able to get the items out of the back, they would still be able to come in without the lamp and get it, because the game assumes that you would have been able to get it through the actual escape sequence.
There is one sharp point that I'm neglecting. We do have an assured sword in Ambrosia mode, so no worries about the execution here, or whether or not we have to do something like a bomb escape. Sword being much easier to handle.
Assured sword is part of why Ambrosia is one of my favorite modes, because it's much easier to be able to navigate through enemies when you can just swing at them as opposed to get creative.
And on top of that, since we do know where the boots are, once we actually do end up picking them up, it's going to feel real comfortable to dash through pretty much everything. get to see a pretty standard, traditional NMG style blue guard for the boomerang room here from both runners, actually, both opting to use their superior range to grab that key from a little further away.
So with the boomerang strat there, they get what, about a 5.5, 6 minute escape for NMG type runs, or I'm not quite sure what the general time frame is for those.
Well, I would say that like I'd say about a 6 minute escape is kind of the hallmark of a great NMG escape. The difference being that we don't check 3 chests in the back. So I would anticipate that adds at least 10 to 15 seconds for most people. Sub 6:30 would probably be a really good escape, considering that you may end up doing a couple of extra things or weird things.
That's fair.
However, having that boomerang does help save frames in several situations, particularly against some of the ropes that get in your way, and rats as well. It's always more time effective to boomerang one enemy, unless they're stacked on top of each other with rats, in which case you want to slash.
Both runners basically on the same screen, one right ahead of the other. Not too bad running through here.
Small potential amounts of optimization, I would say, if it was an NMG run. Having half a heart in the Sanctuary used to save you about a half second thanks to some quirks with the game's engine. But there's no text box there anymore, so that's no longer a thing. SailorNep probably will be picking up a safety heart here in the back half, right past this door. There's a pot conveniently along the path towards the staircase.
That pot is one of my favorite things to pick up, as I generally do find myself in SailorNep's situation of having a lower health total than desired in here, but SailorNep's deciding, nope, doesn't need it.
Yeah, that's potentially bold. The death in the escape just feels really, really awful. It takes quite a lot of time to actually get through. The good news was that you would respawn at a couple of one of a couple updated spawn points. It might be Zelda Cell in this scenario, but which I think actually is definitely worse than the front door.
Yeah, in that situation, for sure. Seems to be getting through the rooms perfectly fine on the one heart now.
Yeah, the worst of the enemies, the ball and chain guard, the regular guards, they are pretty clear of us now, so provided we don't have some weird tomfoolery with the bomb, we should be good here.
Right, let's see what we have in the back of escape. Not a whole lot.
An interesting choice to expend another bomb from SailorNep. It does save a little bit of time if you throw it early enough, but that is one less bomb to have at your disposal throughout the rest of the overworld stuff. DarkShadows doing the same thing, maybe representative of the confidence of having a sword.
Could be the sword. The 10 bomb pack might just make them think they're never going to run out for the entire game.
Also, Chad made great points about how we don't have text boxes in this version of A Link to the Past. So yeah, 6-minute escape. Apparently the hallmark of a good job.
There we go. And we get a quick map check. I saw a red crystal at Tower of Hera and a green pendant over at Eastern.
It looked to be a regular crystal over at Desert Palace, so interesting configuration to start with. Nobody likes to have to dip or even double dip a pendant dungeon. And knowing that there's an item on that boss, that's a possibility.
Yeah, 4-item Eastern with the green pendant and Sasla right there. Mighty tempting.
We have exited the rain state, so Dark Shadows here are going to check to see what the tier 2 tree pull was after having killed 4 enemies and taken damage. We'll have an opportunity to check tier 1 while going through the forest. Going to check the Hoarder Crab for a bunch of red rupees, and trying to get the last item, but we didn't get a chance to see it.
Looks like he might have been one pickup shy on that. Meanwhile, SailorNep was able to find powder in the drop-down over in Lost Woods.
That is a bow on on the lumberjack ledge.
So
So that could be logical silvers. Who knows?
ag required at least for silvers, potentially even just to get into Eastern Pod. With that progressive bow, there is certainly the possibility that we have a bow sitting in the back of Pod.
Which would be quite a confusing find for like a couple seconds. But we have fast travel already. SailorNep finding the flute here in Blind's Hut. Very convenient for this early in the game.
And then we get a hook shot. All right. So we have East Death Mountain access.
All right, so pulling through here, SailorNep getting all of the nice fast move things, um, except for those boots, and we will end up heading to Palace of Darkness at some point. I don't think with what this is shaking out to be, we'll be avoiding that forever.
Now, I think even if we see that Pod turns out to be a pendant, the 5 items in there, knowing one of them is going to be the boots, probably too good of a draw for them to want to skip out on in any case.
Both of our racers today taking advantage of both Tier 1 and Tier 2 tree pulls, getting 20 rupees total actually out of the Tier 1, which is nice extra pocket change for Kakariko Village, as we're only going to get a 50% rebate from the vendor, still putting us within comfortable range to buy more bombs if we needed them. Thankfully, we started with 10.
We're getting the flute activation by Nep, so good chance after race game we won't see the traditional save and quit back to Link's house to go to South Shore. May even wind up taking the time to go check Agina relatively early based on the fact that you can just flute over to 6.
Yeah, having this access to just, everywhere in the world on those 8 locations just makes some of those one-off checks a lot more appealing than they would be otherwise, walking through the desert segment painfully slow.
Chat pointing out that Nep was not checking the lumberjack, so they are currently unaware that the bow is there. Could play havoc in one direction or the other, depending on where that second bow is and how these guys decide to route.
Well, that completes most of Kakariko. We do still have the library bookshelf to check for SailorNep and the race game.
Just bombs in the library. I was kind of hoping to see the other bow there.
So Dark Shadows lagging a little bit behind due to the lumberjack check and taking a little bit of time to farm that first tree with the hoarder crab as well. But the information advantage might end up being significant, as you mentioned. It could be quite a while before we ever even have a chance to go to Palace of Darkness. It might be behind Aghanim that we do so. But I see SailorNep's perspective on this. Don't have the boots, don't go check it. It might just end up being relevant for that.
Yeah, and it might even turn out to be work in SailorNep's favor if that's not a requirement, and Dark Shadows has it in the back of his mind the whole time and decides Ag is a quick clear to get a bow, and Nep goes somewhere else to find the, I guess, first one in that instance.
All right, SailorNep heading into the South Shore. She'll get both of these 2 items here, and then could potentially flute over to 8, but we'll probably just walk over to the mini Moldorm Cave. I think that's faster from here.
Yeah, generally I think walking from 7 over to the mini Moldorm Cave and then fluting to 8 is the faster of the route. 300 pickup outside the dam is nice. Might see a fake flipper over to Zora, depending on what else we get money-wise.
And interestingly enough, SailorNep not taking the hoarder crab rupees that she just checked right there, which might be confidence that one of these 5 items here will be some rupees, maybe even Ice Rod Cave.
And as someone in chat is pointing out, this might end up being an Aga seed anyway, especially where we have currently the cape. We just need one more item for Aga access, where we still need 3 to guarantee that we can get through the Dark World without him.
Yo, shout outs to Mini Moldarm Cave, immediately proving why you should not stop for that Hoarder crab.
Yeah, that's money for the rest of the seed, let alone Zora.
I mean, shoot, you don't need too much more. You need for big game getting into Palace of Darkness. Yeah, we're loaded.
Nep opting to skip the Ice Rod Cave, going and grabbing the Old Man instead. First sequence break here.
I like this choice. I mean, you definitely know that it's not going to be boots in Ice Rod Cave, so I mean, what's the concern about skipping it, for now at least?
You know, especially with the flute, it's not a terrible time loss to just drop to 8 and run back over. Just a little love from the Old Man, so to the east side of Death Mountain we go. Nope.
Okay, so we're going to get the save and quit point and the information from the Ledge of the Desert here, so that'll be an Agina's Cave check over Ice Rod. SailorNep potentially trying to chain together a Moon Pearl to set up the Waterfall Cave, Water Walk, goodness gracious, which would be an interesting routing choice.
And Dark Shadows is about to get his inheritance, we'll call it. Someone called that.
Well, all I'm saying is it paid off. SailorNep made the right call here.
Absolutely. So now a Zora check out of logic can net everything in the light world, not having to worry about leaving those 2 items behind.
And then, even if it doesn't end up being something that we require a sequence break for, the efficiency of this routing allows SailorNep to potentially, you know, just like isolate catfish or something and never have to worry too much about that corner of the world. So, but either way, though, without the flippers currently, we will get to see what's on the Zora ledge. We won't necessarily be able to get that item. I gotta think, though, SailorNep follows this up with going to Waterfall Cave. I don't see the alternative.
No, the Ice Rod Cave grab is probably just a hope to maybe see a flipper there before going and doing so, but yeah, I think we're going to see the flipper action here in a moment. It looks like we're going to see it from both runners, if SailorNep is going there. Yep.
Now, I don't believe either of them has scouted out Lake Hylia Island, so there will be the choice as well to go to Hobo, and whether or not you choose to continue the chain with the rupee count. Kind of makes sense in my opinion. Well, so that Moon Pearl find very early on is a location that I can't imagine Dark Shadows is going to be in a big hurry to check. Even with that flute, that's still a one-off of sorts. We'll get to see after the Zora chain, I think, whether or not that ends up being a priority, but Eastern Palace probably feels a little more appropriate.
Yep, and SailorNep opting after the Hobo to skip the Zora chain, so not going too deep in the sequence break. Looks like they're going to head back up the mountain and get themselves into East Death Mountain.
Yeah, so perhaps, as you mentioned, the sequence break kind of feeling a little bit, you know, hey, what's going to be the implications of this? And SailorNep wisely choosing to stay within logic to make sure that, you know, they understand exactly what to expect going forward.
And Dark Shadows without the Moon Pearl skipping the Waterfall Cave there. About to give us the information as to whether or not going up here without flippers is a bad move. Only 20 on the ledge there, so doing all right by that.
Yeah, we'll get a thorough look here at the Light World Death Mountain, but this is Zora right here. 500 rupees, very pricey, but if this ends up being something significant, then Dark Shadows has a hefty timing advantage on it, because this is not somewhere that SailorNep's going to want to go, you know, first after having already done the fake flipper.
And unfortunately, we're just getting soggy bombs. SailorNep is over in Paradox Cave. Believe they checked the Spec Rock Cave, but I was paying more attention to the Zora side, so I did not see what was in there.
It was skipped, so I don't think it was that essential.
Chat informing us that it was just blueberries in there. Oh, never mind. Heart container. Thanks to Star. And Dark making the correct play here, despite not having that knowledge, he's going to grab that Moon Pearl.
I really do think having that flute made it way more appealing. Otherwise, I can't imagine most runners trying to check this early when there are other things you could potentially do. We did find a lamp from Paradox Cave. So SailorNep coming up mostly empty from this, but this is a reason that we could potentially consider Eastern.
Consider Eastern, hope to see a bow in there, maybe get a clear on it. Also, that lamp putting Aga in full logic now.
Now, I suppose the question is, do you check Sahasrahla, then, I don't know, commit to going to Aghanim, or do you just poke your head into Eastern anyway?
I would poke my head to Eastern because I try to avoid Aghanim like the plague, but Dark Shadows I could certainly see jumping into Eastern, jumping over to Aga as opposed to Eastern, knowing that that bow is on Lumberjack Ledge. SailorNep without that information might choose to hit Eastern. And our tracker Reg pointing out that Nep skipped Spiral Cave.
Well, that's an interesting choice that has totally never burned anybody ever.
No, never. No one's ever had an important item in there.
We may find out soon. It might be a while. SailorNep finding nothing over at Sahasrahla will actually go to the Zora area now that we've exhausted all of the dense item checks. So it appears that SailorNep opting to really prioritize density so far in this seed.
And going to give us the look at the waterfall cave that Dark was unable to get into without that Moon Pearl. So potentially getting something here that could give a leg up. Master Sword, always a nice find.
And there's our map check of the Dark World. So we got Skull Woods and Swamp Palace pendants. Our other the sixth crystal being on Turtle Rock. So it might be a lot of things in order to make the Pyramid Fairy something necessary at this point.
Yeah, I don't see the Pyramid Fairy being checked unless there is a hard requirement item in there that they have to come back down off the mountain for. Nep, though, making that play into Aghanim.
Now this is foregoing, all of that Eastern Palace that we had available to us. There were a couple of items in there. I had 3, right?
Yeah, we have 3 in there, 2 accessible without the bow.
Yes, one of them is guaranteed to be on Armos, so the low odds of there being a bow in there, probably the reason SailorNep opted to do this Aghanim play.
Yeah, especially where we do have one of the 3 pieces, so if we happen to somehow have both hammer and a mitt or 2 mitts in Eastern, that would mean that the Aga play is not required, but percentage of that possibility happening remarkably low.
Yeah, so the safe call here, which will, of course, also lead us to our boots. SailorNep will have the opportunity to go into Palace of Darkness. Now, they could be, locked behind a hammer and on Helmasaur, but let's not hope for the worst just yet.
For Nep's best case scenario, I think the first chest having it showing that Pod would be boots locked, and then giving them the opportunity to head over and check Lumberjack Cave would be most ideal.
Yeah, because now that you put it that way, if that was our only bow, that would be boots locked. Yikes.
And that would have to put the boots off of Helmasaur and not even in the Dark Maze area. Well, it could be in the Dark Maze area. If the keys are laid out right, they could get in there.
Well, potentially big news here. Dark Shadows going to provide us some news with this spiral cave check, which we did not see from SailorNet before. Quite the time sink. Walking this does not feel good. So we'll see here if the item is going to be half magic.
Certainly not a requirement, but something you love to see.
Yeah, being that we don't have a huge inventory to work with just yet, the cape being available to us, half magic's pretty handy in a number of boss fights. So if looks like Dark Shadows should pick up that Master Sword in this sequence here.
Yeah, Dark looks like he's going to exhaust every option prior to going to Aghanim. So what do we think for the blue ball count? I'm going with 3.
Well, I mean, who doesn't like suffering? I'm expecting 7. For those of you out there less familiar with this fight, Aghanim is a 5 attack cycle. We want to do those reflectable energy ball attacks back at him. Attack number 1 in the cycle will always be reflectable. 2, 3, and 4 have a 50-50 chance of being that or a blue ball, which does no damage to Aghanim, but can hurt us. You need 6 total hits to kill him, and the 5th attack's always going to be a lightning. Cycle repeats. So at worst, you could have 15 blue balls, mathematically speaking. At best, 0. It's all RNG at that point.
Dark making the play over to Sahasrahla as we see the second of the lightning attacks out of Aga. Will be interesting to see after the Sahasrahla closet here. Does Dark make that play over to Aga, or does he decide the 2 items in Eastern are a worthy gamble?
I lost count.
Looks like we're actually going to see Eastern out of Dark Shadows here.
Which I believe, if I remember correctly, that you said before, Penguin, that has to be hammer plus glove, or 2 gloves in order to bail him out from Aga, right?
Absolutely. He has to get Dark World access out of both of these chests at this point. Which is remarkably unlikely.
Or maybe even a combo of that with the bow that gets it on the boss, but essentially, yeah, there has to be 2 in here.
And chat saying we had 10 blue balls there. Wow.
It's a bad day sometimes, but at least you know that your opponent, if they end up being forced into Aghanim, will have to do the same thing. The downside, of course, being that there's like extra minutes involved with that many. So SailorNep potentially having sunk in some time if this Eastern Palace ends up being miraculous, or absolutely miraculous for Dark Shadows.
Nep wasting no time making the walk over to Pod, finding just 20 rupees on the pyramid ledge, so we probably won't be seeing either runner pick that up today.
Yeah, cruising at around 1,000 rupees each, or average of 1,000. Absolutely no reason to be concerned about any of those at this point. We do have a small fee to pay in order to get into Palace of Darkness, though, taking about 11% or so, I don't know, 10%, something like that, of SailorNep's total rupee count to get into Palace of Darkness, where we have a pair of boots and potentially more.
So our first item in Eastern being 50 bucks pretty much locks us out of not needing to go to Aga at this point. Even with that bow, we're not going to get a second location opened. So the boss having the other item, yeah, we have to go. Aga is hard required here.
Alright, well, the good news for backtracking is that we were not bow locked in Palace of Darkness, which, if there were a bow somewhere out there in the Dark World, could be possible. SailorNep dodging that, we'll be able to simply continue through the dungeon as normal. Soon to find those boots, I presume. I guess that scenario is still possible. Boots on like Helmasaur or something like that, but I mean, it'd be so confusing to not pick them up in these checks.
Yeah, you gotta think with 14 potential item locations, Helma being the one with the boots. Without that bow, Nep's gonna take the chance on the key for key on this door without having the information on the 2 chests on the right hand side. Smart play, get it out of the way, make sure you don't have it in the back of your mind later. Just bombs out of the big chest in Eastern, so Dark Shadow's coming out completely empty. Probably going to go ahead and make his play over to Aga now as well.
Well, that puts quite a stretch between the two of them. That 10 blue ball Aghanim fight is very lengthy, plus the tower itself. So SailorNep has a pretty hefty lead here into the Dark World.
And may not even ever hit Eastern, depending upon how the items play out for the rest of the seed here. May gain even more time just based off that as we go along.
Well, no big key just yet, so no hammer yumps in play just yet, but depending on the keys here, SailorNep may end up deciding to do so. Picking up those boots, which we knew were going to be here thanks to our uncle having scouted it out about half an hour ago.
And that now gives SailorNep the ability to go and pick up the bow that they are unaware of in the Lumberjack Cave, as well as make a quicker Spiral Cave check that they decided to skip out on earlier.
Well, we are out of small keys. Looks like SailorNep going to have to do a north side bomb jump or potentially just reset from the bottom. Otherwise, will be pretty difficult to pull off. Getting kind of close there. Unfortunately, having a bad position for the second part of that, where the bomb knockback sent SailorNep off the ledge. So, a save and quit out of there. We're done for now. Although that will put SailorNep towards that bow sooner.
Yeah, a fortuitous save and quit, even though they're not quite aware of it just yet. Would not be surprised to see bonk rocks here and then a quick trip up to the Lumberjack area, getting a bit of knowledge there. Going to be really relieved to see the bow and be able to know that they can go back to pod and get the right-hand side when they feel the need to. And actually, with the hook shot, they can get over. Oh, they don't have flippers, so they can't get over to west side yet. So going to have to go back to pod.
Get over to the west side of
Dark World.
We have the hook shot. We can.
But don't you need hammer or glove to peg down or pick
Yes,
up
you're
the
right.
thing, or flippers to get into the water?
Yeah, one of those 3 items. Duh.
So-
yes, so that'll be the one remaining component for exploring the rest of the Dark World. We find that hammer, we have other means anyway to getting across a lot of segments of it, but until we find Titan's Mitts, we won't be able to go up the Village of Outcasts from the south either.
And Sick Kid delivering on the hammer. So now we can indeed get over to the west side of Dark World. Don't need to just immediately double dip pod.
That's also great information to have at the same time as just finding that bow, so that may be a reason SailorNep opts to just like complete that now, already in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Complete that now. Probably gonna take the chance on Eastern not having anything there. Right off the east side for a while and head over towards the Village of Outcast and continue progression. Well, Dark Shadows is, I'm sure, enjoying very much his 10 blue ball Aga fight.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do to make this fight faster. In fact, the only thing you really can do at all is try to knock Aghanim towards the center of the room to make the optimal warp patterns more likely. It's still all RNG, but you can potentially save some frames.
Looks though like he's just opting to throw him into a wall and express his dissatisfaction with hookshot.
Yeah, we're really seeing exactly how DarkShadows59 feels about this fight. Wow, that was some pretty fast hookshotting.
May actually have a turbo controller.
Do you think Dark Shadows knows how to hover? Because, I mean, like, we're seeing some real mashing here.
Would not surprise me, and if they don't, they should try it, because they probably do and don't realize it.
Well, would be an asset to Beer Force 1. Dark Shadows should consider that upon a rewatch. But in the meantime, after having finally defeated Aghanim 1, we'll be able to head over to Palace of Darkness, where SailorNep, already on the second visit, is done with the right side, going to head on over to Helmasaur King, possibly the last item.
Oh, we didn't see anything in the Dark Maze area, so we have 4 checks over there with the big chest.
Yeah, so we need more.
Well, 3 checks over there, sorry. So helmet, we have 4 checks left, so yeah, we'll see SailorNep take out Helma, and then most likely go over and hit the big chest area. It's a great way to go, route it when you don't have a mirror to get yourself out of there.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because we already need to return to the entrance anyway. So 2 items guaranteed over on the left, and 1 guaranteed here on Helmasaur King.
And where Dark did check the Lumberjack, it would not surprise me to see a quick save and quit out as soon as he sees those boots to go grab his bow and then come back over.
Which should pay off similarly, as long as DarkShadows59 doesn't forget the bottle that is in Bonk Rocks, as that would lead him to his hammer and allow him to finish the dungeon as well. Well, SailorNep's turn for Helmasaur King. 17 smacks to the face, and should be able to knock this over to phase 2, where we might see hammer strikes, but sword spins or slashes perfectly serviceable as well.
I don't know about you, but I distinctly remember only ever throwing bombs at Helmasaur's mask when I was a child.
I am so relieved to hear you say that.
Well, what's funny is a lot of people will say, like, oh, you know, I knew it was the hammer because the game kind of points you to you should use the item you get on the boss. But the only dungeon that actually holds true in up until Pod is Eastern. So 2 out of 3 dungeons don't have that requirement.
Man, I farmed so many rupees outside of Desert to get those flippers just so I could buy those bomb capacity upgrades. I was real scared as a kid.
I do like seeing how many people in chat are saying that they also bombed, so I'm not feeling as bad anymore. Thank you, chat.
Hey, it's a credit to how amazing this game really is. You have options available to you. SailorNep opting to take the considerably more difficult fight, trying to do hammer strikes on the second phase, which is, I mean, of course, on the first phase as well, but the second phase left and right side jewel strikes are considerably more difficult to do than just simply slashing. The advantage being that it's faster and does twice as much damage.
And we get a first glove upgrade coming out of the big chest and Pod, so Pod paying out dividends here.
Definitely an excellent hammer yump as well. Something that only took like a couple menu buffers, which is all in all a very fast jump.
So now with hammer, with glove, with moon pearl, with bow, with hookshot, the only place we really can't go is the water.
Yeah, something of a Matryoshka logic going on here. Everything nested within each other in short sequence. But now that we have a lot of traversal on hands, SailorNep, she's going to be heading to Hype Cave immediately.
And interestingly enough, Dark Shadow opting to try to mimic clip into the bow side area of Pod, as opposed to just taking the keys and getting what he can. Gonna see that he's losing a little bit of time here when he finds out the boots were in a perfectly accessible location.
Yeah, something of an insurance play. In the meantime, we'll get a Quake out of Hype Cave, but Mimic Cave, or not Mimic Cave, Mimic Clipping, perfectly legal race strategy. The thing is as you mentioned, if you're not getting it right away, you're definitely sinking some time into it, and it's pretty difficult to do. Dark Shadow is really going for these pause buffers, which, um, really lengthens the amount of time that you're spending on it. It looks like we're almost there, but not quite.
Meanwhile, SailorNep opting to head over towards Stumpy and the dig game. A pretty common route that I see the runners taking these days to get those out of the way before coming down from the north side of the Village of Outcast.
The big payoff is the potential for Titan's Mitts or a mirror over here. Those would be really exceptional finds to kind of extend this logical chain and get extra checks out of it. Well, that was a successful mimic clip for Dark Shadows, so this will be a relatively fast run through for the right side. We'll have extra keys, so while this still will be a double dip, it won't be uh, routed the same way that SailorNep did.
And the interesting thing too, though, is he's going to have the glove coming out of here, going to get his boot, and going to get his bow once he has the boots. That might put him off from checking Sick Kid with the bottle once he gets it and getting the hammer.
Yeah, that's entirely true. We'll have different options available to him.
Looks like SailorNep's going to go and hit that spiral cave that they left behind a bit earlier and get the information that it is not required.
Yeah, that appears to be the only check available up here. So where to next is another question. I gotta imagine Village of Outcasts area seems pretty appealing after this.
Yeah, especially if, well, no, not going to find Titansmith, so King's Tomb's not going to be an option. They can check the bumper ledge and see what's up there. Actually, they have access to it as well with the power glove there, so they'll have the one check they can get along the way. If it happens to have a mirror, they can get the other two quickly, and then dive into some of the dungeons over there on the west side, like Thieves Town.
And there's half magic for SailorNep. Convenient find around this time of the seed. You definitely want to have more magic to work with when you start doing these Dark World dungeons. Palace of Darkness, not nearly as scary. But heading back up to the top, it looks like, to head over to Tower Farah.
Yep, one of our 5-6 crystals. Good play to make. Has everything needed to complete it. Maybe get something out of there that'll help them not need to come back up the mountain again until they go to Turtle Rock.
Interesting brief pause there from Dark Shadows, kind of contemplating the bow locked, boots locked power glove, as that is the logical requirements the Dark Shadows should have been taking to get to it, knowing that there was some sequences being broken.
Looking like Dark may take the opportunity here to go check Catfish real quick while he's in the area. Not a bad play, because otherwise, when are you going to go? Easily one of the more orphanable locations we have.
I'm just wondering how much of this is potentially considering as like a counter strategy to SailorNep, as this is kind of an isolated thing. It takes some time to do this. Maybe hoping to find a mirror somewhere along the path just to make this more efficient.
And Nep looking like they're giving up on the Harapot and opting to just take their coffee break down in the basement for the key. Yeah, and I like the catfish play right after pod only because of the fact that it is so isolated, but it is definitely a moment where you just stand there and stare at whatever item he gives you if it's not something that you wanted.
Yeah, and I find it hard to argue that there's a better time to be checking this. You're already going to be heading west if you're going to continue in the Dark World from here.
So now we get to see what the fish throws at him.
Bailed from Bonk Rocks immediately.
He'll go to Sanctuary, go to Bonk Rocks, see a second bottle, and wonder why he went to Catfish.
I mean, this would have been fortunate even if we had skipped the Bonk Rocks for any reason, so... having a second green potion, not a bad thing. You just have half magic, so you're like, do I really need 2 of these?
Yeah, at some point, maybe just drink one to grab a blue one later.
For a moment there, I thought we were skipping Bonk Rocks, and it was about to be a prophetic thing, but no prophecies involved here. Dark Shadows picking up the second one. Soon to, of course, also be getting a hammer if he remembers these bottles are the first 2.
Well, the interesting thing, too, though, is without getting the hammer, where else can you go but back to pod?
Yeah, knowing that, yeah, that's a good point. Otherwise, wouldn't have any other choices.
And he did clear out everything but Helma, so he knows the hammer can't be in there.
Maybe check Eastern if we don't go to turn in the bottle first?
Yeah, he could do that. Armos and the green pendant. See if the hammer's on one of those first.
Well, it looks like we're going to be safe from that conclusion today.
He's making the right call here and grabbing Sick Kid and gonna get a hammer for it. Meanwhile, Nep getting bombs off of our friend Moldorm there and picking up their second crystal at 45 minutes in.
Seemingly absolutely nothing else of value. Saw a quarter heart, but beyond that, this is a crystal, so we do have that component going for us.
Now, Dark Shadow remembering that they got the early powder, where SailorNep skipped this check.
Yeah, so Dark Shadow's going to consult with our friend Bat Albert to see what he's got hiding behind there.
We're in Bottle City.
Just jars on jars on jars in this scene.
The best part of this is it's Dark Shadows, the one who mimic clipped because he didn't have a bottle to do potion glitch over on the right side of pod, grabbing the 3 bottles in a row.
Well, the good news is that it's very unlikely, no matter where else you found items, even if we somehow had to come across the mirror at this point, which we can't, of course, until the items we found. But even if you had, you would have been safe from all of the weirdest checks, would have led you somehow to that hammer.
Oh, for sure. And not taking the time to go back to pod and finish off Helmasaur, actually the right play to make here, because we know that Helmasaur is not carrying anything of any important.
Alright, so this is a Helmasaur ahead at minimum for SailorNep here, as we start considering our Dark World options. As you'd mentioned, you know, it's certainly less appealing to be in Skullwoods for long, but if you do find that first item, you can definitely leave and not worry about the Fire Rod for a while.
Yeah, the only way the front of Skullwoods ever feels terrible in an Ambrosia situation is when you find out after checking every chest that both items are in the back area.
Yeah, and that definitely can happen.
So Dark opting to go into our pendant Skullwoods, and SailorNep opting for clearing out the village. Probably going to check this brewery down here and then head back up into Thieves Town, having pulled the trident.
Yeah, I like what she's doing here. If you can gather more things before the dungeon when it's right there, you may as well. And that kind of implies, by going into Thieves Town before C-Shaped House, that SailorNep is likely going to head south out of Village of Outcasts, getting C-Shaped House and Hammer Pegs on the way down.
And we have a very fortunate Skullwoods dip for Dark Shadows, picking up Arcane of Samaria.
Yeah, and that's all you can get from here. Nothing else in the entire dungeon worth even looking at for Dark Shadows at this point, as long as we have enough keys, which you can get one on the way to the back. So yeah, it's just Mothula later, if you are concerned about one item. However, we don't even need the kill for Mothula to even beat the game at this point, as far as we know.
And we have Mitts on Bumper Ledge. Yeah, the only way we need to kill off Mothula is if he's carrying an item or if there is something on that pedestal, which there's still a couple possibilities for that.
Yeah, our pendant dungeons aren't super restrictive. The mirror for Swamp Palace and Flippers, Skull Woods just requiring the Fire Rod, and Eastern Palace we can already do in Logic. So yeah, I mean, as mentioned, medallions potentially on the table for the pedestal. Maybe the other bow by the game's logic.
Medallions, Ice Rod, and potentially Silvers. That would be... Oh, or we could always follow the chat meme of shovel into book into tablet for the item coming off a pedestal, but pedestal dream is dying with every check they make.
Don't worry, chat. The algorithm will pay off for you eventually.
Picking up a medallion out of Thieves Town, so that's one less.
And we had the Quake, of course, in Hype Cave, which Dark Shadows has not been to yet, perhaps hoping to get during the south route.
Yeah, I tend to see a lot of people want to do that. Interesting that he's making that decision not having had Titans at first, because having Titans makes that much easier. But definitely paying off that he hit the bumper ledge and got them. Going to be able to do basically all of that chain down toward that area in one go.
Now, the good news for SailorNep is that we already did Dig Game, so there's no reason for SailorNep to head south unless we found like a mirror here, and even then that would be more likely to lead you to northern Dark World, I would think. So I think SailorNep very likely to get Titan's Myths shortly after this, might be dipping into Skull Woods first.
Yeah, I could see a Skull Woods or just see Safe House right over to Bumper Ledge and then have, thinking if Bumper Ledge has nothing, I'll dip Skull, and then seeing Titan's Myths and changing that plan immediately.
Blind sharing our favorite pun about, I don't know, stuff being depressing. To lighten the mood, actually putting on a fireworks show for us, and SailorNep, having already seen this before, seems to already know what to do.
Yeah, it was a very well scripted fight there from Nep.
Yeah, maybe just a slight delay on the second phase causing Blind to go the other direction, but with literally no damage taken, SailorNep really crushing that fight. That was a great response to the second phase.
Getting rewarded with 20 rupees and their third crystal.
Shout out to Dark Shadows being efficient with sword spins. All 3 grasshoppers. 1 master sword spin. Pretty nice.
So now we have the C-shaped house check, and where is SailorNep going to go from here? Are we going to Skull Woods or are we going to Bumper Ledge? Looking like Skull Woods.
Well, that's good news for SailorNep for staying within the same item pool as Dark Shadows for that check. That Cane of Samaria, great information for later.
Yeah, that'll be a relief to see, because You definitely don't want to have to start hunting in pendant dungeons for that, not having gone to it when you were literally right next door.
So this is putting us in a pretty good position for most of this seed. We're still short a mirror and some sort of desert access and both rods for Turtle Rock. Beyond that, I mean, we're starting to get pretty close to being able to hone in on what's remaining. Some potential for Gomo dungeons here, but not guaranteed.
With their current loadout, I think both runners would love to see the flippers last so that they can do Ice Palace as their go mode before they head up to Turtle Rock. And of course, eliminating Swamp Palace from the equation of potentially having something for progression for him.
Well, somewhat shakier blind fight here for Dark Shadows, with plenty of health to tank through it. Does emerge from the fight victorious and gets on the board with a crystal. The first crystal, I believe, for Dark Shadows this race.
That it is. He has not made his way up to Hera, and he did leave Helmasaur behind after going and grabbing the bow.
And I thought for a second here SailorNep had to take a second, but I think it's just waiting for the floor or the wall master.
Yeah, waiting for the free ride out. Now with cane in hand, heading out, probably going to go check the bumper ledge, get their Titan's mitts, and who knows, probably head south or East Death Mountain in the Dark World. Also a good option. Pretty dense location for them there.
I get the feeling that's what she's doing. It just seems kind of obvious to me that like that's where your most likely items are. Because yeah, I mean you could continue further south and try and pick up like the Smith chain, but that's awkward to do without the mirror.
And with the Smith chain, we're looking at, without the book, 2 potential items at this point. Well, 3, because she could do hammer pegs. So 3 items there, or 6 items up in the east side of Death Mountain in the dark area. Density's better.
Of course, if it turns out the way that you know we have the book in that chain for Smith, you know, if it worked out that way, then there could be some nasty logical implications for SailorNep here. That Dark Shadows could potentially diverge on and gain some time back at with, but as it stands right now, a healthy advantage for SailorNep. 2 extra crystals, all of the same items for the most part, plus that Quake. Looking like this is going to slant pretty well in her direction so far.
And chat pointing out that there's a 66% chance that Meyer can be opened and finished, so they would go there, and lo and behold, here's SailorNep in the Meyer area.
That was quick. Did you catch it?
Not on the first go, and not on the stream itself either. I don't think it looked like Bombos.
Yeah, I thought it kind of looked like Quake, but it could be Ether as well. Oh, looks like we can do it. So yeah, SailorNep gonna jump in with the Ether medallion.
Vitreous without silvers and with a Master Sword, not necessarily the most fun of fights, but completable dungeon. You know you're going to get 2 items out of it. You're going to get your 4th crystal. No better time to go do it than now.
It's not 36 fighter sword spins. I mean, who would ever do that? I may have fallen into that trap. Folks, PSA, public PSA, always keep 8 arrows if you're going to fight a Vitreous.
I think you could have mirrored out, shoveled up some arrows, and went back in and finished it off with it prior to needing the 36 spins to finish.
Probably. Well, Dark Shadows here going to pick up the Quake here from Hype Cave. Has some relatively similar overall choices available to him. While SailorNep here looking to hopefully find the first item very quickly, as the second one is definitely on Vidi.
And looking at the loadouts, it is strikingly similar despite the crystal disparity here. So, boss is not really paying off in the item department for us yet today.
Yeah, it's kind of a hallmark of Ambrosia that we see more value overall out of bosses, and it's one reason that I think a lot of teams will pick certain representatives. They feel really strongly about the boss execution, particularly with low percent, situations. But it's not turning out that way. As you mentioned, we really haven't seen much of anything on the bosses.
And we're getting our Riot Shield out of King's Tomb. Getting a small key out of the chest there in the compass room of Meyer means that we are going to have a big key down here in the cutscene room. No way to avoid this one.
A very unfun torches room for SailorNep here because these torches with lamp are just really annoying to do, and sometimes you mess up the block puzzle. Kind of easy to slip. Plus these whiz robes, but we get it in one try.
Dark Shadows dropped off the smith. Now looks like going to make the play probably for either the purple chest or maybe going across. No, it has to be the purple chest here at this point. And hammer pegs.
Well, we talked about it before, Penguin. The Smith chain is quite the divergence from what SailorNep is up to right now, which is very clearly motivated on getting those crystals that you're able to. I'm probably leaning a little more heavily into the game type Ambrosia. But we'll see here from Dark Shadows. We'll get a mirror and then or maybe a save and quit and then a flute because we don't have a mirror to turn that into the desert area where our thief in the canyons will unlock that chest for at least one item. Speaking of mirrors.
Yeah, there's that mirror. And a very convenient mirror for SailorNep because, as you said, going with that see a crystal, clear a crystal concept can just mirror right over and take care of Desert Palace immediately after Meyer here.
And that is currently our only means of accessing desert, so yeah, you couldn't have comboed that better.
And the thief paying out yet more money to our runners.
Yeah, kind of living up to the name and the legend. Normally you get a bottle from there in the vanilla game, but I almost feel like a thief should have cash on him. But an hour into this race, and things are looking up for SailorNep right now. Dark Shadows perhaps sinking further into them.
If he does go in and make the Meyer play, we'll get the mirror. That's going to feel a little bad having just finished the Smith chain, but does open up opportunities for him to make some routing decisions that could potentially catch him up a little bit.
Yeah, mirror locations in the overworld, a couple that are just really annoying to do. The tablets, for one, we don't have a book for them just yet. The K45, Graveyard Ledge, both things that might weigh on Dark Shadow's mind when we do find that, if we do find that book later.
As SailorNep is about to head to the end of Misery Mire, we have Dark Shadows heading into the beginning of it.
Well, not a ton of health to work with, but thankfully half magic and cape strats should make this just a slashing adventure, so to speak, for SailorNep. Going to have quite a few lag frames to contend with, but certainly more slashes than there are eyeballs.
Yeah, I like this strategy particularly because the cape does not drain as you're slashing that sword, so just wildly mashing the button gives you a longer time in that cape and makes video a little bit easier.
And with 8 arrows to the iris, or maybe even less depending on how many times you slash in the first phase, SailorNep emerging with yet another pretty useless boss item, but a crystal to her name, so all the way to 5 compared to her opponent Dark Shadows, who has 1 right now. We'll have 2 leaving this dungeon, but yeah, I mean, this is a huge advantage and a huge lead in my opinion.
Yeah, what Dark Shadows probably has to hope for at this point is SailorNep seeing the flippers and opting into a pendant dungeon, which just based on current routing, I don't see happening, and finding nothing there to help make up some of that time.
Well, with that mirror in tow, SailorNep has the most convenient Desert Palace routing to work with here. Just gotta find that big key to finish up the dungeon. We're not worried about really much of anything else unless there happens to be, say, a fire rod or an ice rod somewhere in here. Or maybe those flippers. Those are the 3 remaining items that we need in order to hit the go mode. With Desert only having a couple of checks that'll actually pay out. Remains to be seen if we'll spend a lot of time checking everything in the remaining dungeons. Could stumble across the rest of these pretty quickly.
Now, I like this big chest check first. If they get the item here, they don't even have to bother with the right side to get the other one. You just go straight to the boss, but unfortunately, just seeing the compass there will be an item on the right side of the desert.
Well, that's an interesting check to isolate. There is quite a lot of world left available to SailorNep, and so this may be another one of those density check situations where she may have been thinking, hey, this doesn't really add up for the time that I got to spend to do it. I would think this is the best opportunity to do it, but it's not that slow to get back here with the flute and mirror.
And depending upon what item the boss does happen to drop, might just jump right back in and grab the right side anyway. And our tracker, Reg, also pointing out that flippers are not needed for go mode, as we've already seen. These guys can just quickly fake flipper into Ice Palace.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. We're not trying to get into Swamp necessarily. Although that is still a possibility. Now that we have that mirror, really all we need is just to find the flippers somewhere like here. And that would be on the table.
It's the first time I've seen someone put a cane block down in the middle of doing Landmo.
If I had to guess, this was an attempt to get some knockback for an extra spin cycle on some of these Lamolus heads. But that's, I'm guessing, pretty inconsistent because I didn't see SailorNet pull that off here, and I've never seen someone do it. But I think the same principle as you would see it in the Ganon fight.
That makes sense. And yet another boss paying off with nothing progressive. But we are now sitting on that 5th crystal. Yeah, I think an hour and 5 minutes in with only the 1 crystal, Dark Shadows has got to be feeling behind at this point.
I mean, even with the 50-something minute first crystal, both situations got to feel really far. But I mean, besides doubling back on some things, not all of the choices made were all that questionable. Just sometimes, the things that you do try to do to play opposite to your opponent don't end up paying out.
Oh,
Was
for
that
sure.
flippers?
No, that was bombs.
I got real excited.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do not want to see flippers at all in this seed. Opting to go back into desert to get that last item, though.
Yeah, so while this is, doesn't feel great to spend the time to do this, it's not like it took more than like 10-15 seconds to get back into the dungeon, and all the way back up to where, she was before. So the mirror out will make this almost a wash. A small time investment to potentially find the item you're looking for on the boss and continue.
And worst case scenario, if finding nothing, still can write off this southwest quadrant, knowing that Mire and Desert are both fully cleared out.
Well, that's virtually everything that we care about here in the southwest corner of Hyrule. SailorNep has the flute out, ready to go, heading to Kakariko Village, presumably to the village of Outcasts, it looks like.
Well, with Mirror and Mitts in hand, probably going to go and take care of that Smith chain.
Yeah, so this will be considerably more efficient than what we saw from Dark Shadows by sheer virtue of the way that the route works for these items.
Dark picking up their second crystal at 1 hour and 7 minutes and some change. Be interesting to see where they decide to go from here. Actually, no, they're going to do the same desert clay because they got the mirror out of Mire as well.
Yep, just a quick check into Checkerboard Cave in case we find a fire rod to make that fight easier, maybe. Definitely a valid reason to be checking this first.
SailorNep gonna pop open the hammer pegs and I believe grab their red mail.
Yes, that's correct. So that'll be full armor for both of these two. SailorNep has not been to King's Tomb or the Northern Hyrule checks to get the Riot Shield, as you called it. The Mirror Shield, of course, really only useful for a couple of fringe scenarios, does cost us a fair amount of lag, but a safety that you're not angry about necessarily.
Oh, and SailorNep noped out of the cave there without picking up the red mail.
Jokingly, it's because she's not a coward.
I was gonna go with her fantasy owners paid her off.
You know, that's the other thing too, is for those of you who are following along with that stuff, there is some quote-unquote fantasy points at stake there, but I don't think SailorNep would be doing that unless, you know, she felt real comfortable with blue mail. So, yeah, I don't think that's necessarily at stake there, but, I mean, somebody's team probably benefited from that.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, no, having 11 hearts, blue mail, being as well versed in the game as they are, no reason to pick up the armor if you don't feel like you need it.
And then, of course, there is the fact that, you know, it's time synced to go pick it up. It's, you know, 3-4 seconds. You know, that's not nothing necessarily in a competitive race. Of course, SailorNep has no idea that she's quite a bit further ahead than DarkShadows59 at this point, with 2 extra dungeons not only completed, but, well, yeah, 3 dungeons completed, about 2.5 total, if you consider where Dark Shadows is now.
SailorNep opting into the Dark World with the chest there, probably going to route K45 in immediately following the purple chest turn in.
So is this that invisible purple chest thing at play, or did SailorNep just leave that?
It's the invisible chest thing.
Thank you. I was a little concerned there.
Yeah, I believe it's so long as, well, I've heard conflicting confirmations on what the exact logic is behind the glitch. Some say that it's until you lose the iframes from the mirror. Others say so long as you have him on the screen when you mirror. I'm not quite sure which one it is.
Well, a successful wormhole carry through, whatever the heck you want to call it, will only give us some rupees as we saw from Dark Shadows before. We're also going to get a sword spin fight as SailorNep finds a full heart container in K45. So continuing those mirror checks, making sure to exhaust all other opportunities here.
Once again, fluting over to 3.
Not entirely sure what's left in this direction. I guess Graveyard Ledge. That's got to be what we're looking at here.
Yeah, following the mirror, grab Graveyard Ledge. Might even route Cat. No flippers. Won't be running Catfishing.
Although I think we have a lot of opportunities to either water walk or, you know, kern jump maybe, or even do like a splash delete.
That's fair. I don't think about those because I can't do them.
Well, there are potentially ways to not worry about flippers whatsoever in this seed. But although I think it's more likely that SailorNep is probably going to head up to East Dark Death Mountain after this.
Graveyard Ledge giving us that Tempered Sword. Great find. And yeah, I'm actually surprised they hadn't gone to the dark side of East Death Mountain just yet.
Yeah, the plus side here is that since we've pretty much exhausted everything else available in Logic, I mean, this is really everything but Eastern Palace Armos and Green Pendant, um, it's fairly likely that both rods are up there.
Saving put to the mountain. Got to be making that eastern mountain play. And we also see Dark Shadows following suit, fluting over to 3, probably also going to hit that graveyard ledge and grab their Tempered Sword.
Yeah, that's good news for Dark Shadows. The longer you don't have that Tempered Sword, the harder it is to try and catch up on this advantage that SailorNep has currently. Several crystals. For those of you who are tuning in potentially late to this race, SailorNep, having made some more efficient routing decisions, does have quite a lengthy lead at the moment in terms of crystal progression. But if Dark Shadows wasn't about to pick up this Tempered Sword here, that could end up spelling doom for several fights ahead in terms of time sync. So this does keep Dark Shadows at least a little bit into the race. Um, Not trying to sound super negative, but this is really SailorNep's race to lose at this point. There's not many locations left to check.
I think for Dark Shadows, the best case scenario would be go to pod, finish it, mirror over, finish Eastern, find the Fire Rod on Armos, and find the Ice Rod behind Sahasrahla.
Ooh, okay, so we have a Bombos Turtle Rock today. That's another thing that could potentially be in the chain that you just described that would help Dark Shadows here against SailorNep.
Yeah, for
SailorNep,
sure.
though, she does have quite a few checks here.
Yeah, would not be surprised to see Bombos hiding under the doormat, and there's our Fire Rod. And the shovel that will probably dig up Bombos.
Yeah, for all we know. Two more checks here in Super Bunny Cave, and then, of course, we do have the possibility of Mothula now, thanks to that Fire Rod, which, if you're tuning in late as well, Ambrosia Seed, meaning that we will have a boss item in every single dungeon. Well, you weren't wrong about under the doormat.
So at this point, though, do you go into Turtle Rock looking for the Ice Rod because you're already up here?
I feel like it's an inevitability at this point. You just have to resign yourself to it. There's really no other choice.
Looking like SailorNep's at least going to open the door. Would not be surprised to see them dip in.
Well, she's made sound, logical decisions all throughout this race. I would not be at all surprised to see the numerous item locations in here produce at least one of the required items. Logically, of course, we are supposed to be able to get the flippers, which I think at this point with that Fire Rod in play is a very likely soon find. But the only thing we really need in order to finish this is a Ice Rod, and SailorNep really knocking on the doorbell here.
Yeah, so with Ice Palace and Swamp being untouchable without the flippers, flippers and Turtle Rock would require the double dip if we see the Ice Rod in one of those two. So I'm really hoping to find Ice Rod before flippers here.
In the meantime, Dark Shadows wrapping up old business, having returned to Palace of Darkness, where we had our boots hint early in the race, as well as or not the hammer, but was it the bottle that gave us hammer that was in here?
Yeah, the bottle gave us the hammer, but the power glove was in pod, so we had to go into pod to get the boots, to get the bow, to come back to pod to get the power glove, essentially.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if Dark Shadow is really too pleased to be back in this neighborhood, but this will be another crystal for him, so Helmosaur King here should be a straightforward fight with this Tempered Sword hammer strats.
It will be interesting to see if, having already cleared out the rest of Eastern Palace, he makes the determination of, there's two quick items, all I gotta do is quick kill Armos and then go hit Sahasrahla with the green pendant.
And given what we know about where SailorNep is, that's probably the best saving throw available for Dark Shadows here, besides maybe going to Skull Woods. Otherwise, really has to retrace a lot of steps that SailorNep's already been through. I could see him heading towards Tower of Hera next, maybe, but Yeah, I don't think
Hera
any
would make
play here
sense
really feels
density-wise.
good.
He also hasn't seen East Death Mountain. He is going into Eastern, so he is going to give us the Outermost Night check as well as the Green Pendant. So our best case scenario for Dark here is that he winds up locating the Ice Rod, and the best case scenario for SailorNep is that he does not.
Yeah, an Ice Rod here and Flippers and Turtle Rock would definitely help to give a little bit more time to equalize the seed. Well, SailorNep deep into Turtle Rock, having to be a little bit careful with the Hokuboku and Anti-Fairies as she's relatively low on health right now. 4 hearts to work with. Here comes that lava chest, which is just going to be 10 arrows. We already have our big key, so no potential time save in this dungeon right now. Although Dark Shadows, if he were to find this Ice Rod, could potentially go mode Turtle Rock and skip that chest.
Yeah. And finding the Ice Rod might send him. Well, finding the Ice Rod might send him into Turtle Rock, and then. Well, no. If he got the Flippers, he'd still wind up. Yeah, finding the Ice Rod here is definitely going to be the best case scenario for him because he's not going to wind up dipping into any other pendants or anything because he'll find the rest of his Go Mode items along the way.
Well, SailorNep, opting to check the big chest here first. Wise choice. Will be stepping back out for a Mimic Cave, though. You don't skip that. Not in this scenario, at least.
It's only in this scenario where when you do skip it, the Ice Rod's in it. Almost dropping bombs, continuing our bosses hold nothing fun.
Yeah, so Ambrosia being the food of the gods, maybe not necessarily true. SailorNep finding some literature here in the Mimic Cave, disrupting the local reading club, it looks like.
Disrupting them and opening 2 more checks for herself.
That is kind of convenient to have here on the mountain, if nothing else, Ether being an option now. And Green Pendant, just bombs today. Dark Shadows probably feeling rough after that one.
Yeah, that was not the item he wanted to see there at all. So if we do wind up seeing the Ice Rod outside of Turtle Rock, Dark Shadows presumably will be able to just go mode it and skip Laser Bridge, as stealing the key would allow him to miss out on needing to go down there.
Yeah, those are some more ideal scenarios. Close calls here in the platform maze for SailorNep. Just 1 heart remaining, having to stop in the middle to grab those 2. Could have used a hook shot instead, but that is time intensive and doesn't provide you the safety of a health refill.
Dark heading into Hera. We'll probably couple this in with going over to East Death Mountain on the Dark World side once he's done.
Was that our 3rd green bottle on Laser Bridge?
It was. So we have all 4 bottles now, 3 green goo and 1 bee. We do not have an Ice Rod in Turtle Rock.
Wait, was that 1 blue bottle or 1 B?
I think it was 3. I think it was 3 green bottles and 1 bee.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant B is in blue.
Nope. B is in B-Torp.
Fair enough, strats available to us. All things considered, though, SailorNep will preserve that portal, hoping to get bailed out here from the Ether Tablet. That would be really the best possible scenario for Ice Rod right now for her.
Yeah, portal saving, very good idea. If it's not here on Ether, though, gonna have to get rid of it to go check the Bombos tablet. Could still preserve it, though, by getting it out of the shovel spot, just fluting down there initially.
Well, big shout outs to our tracker today, Reg, who is informing us that you can actually save a portal if you do an Ice Palace dive. Um, is that true? You end up going into the Dark World? Wouldn't you? Oh, because you can save and continue, right?
Not sure how the portal saving would work there.
I'm thinking you can do it with a death.
Okay, yeah. Clear IP, die afterwards, save and continue, save the portal.
I don't think
And
SailorNep ever actually went to Zora. Oh, no, we left the waterfall cave.
no, SailorNep got the Master Sword out of the cave.
So we just didn't check
They-
Zora. Okay.
Yeah, did not check Zora. And chat pointing out that the portal saving would not work in that scenario just based on the fact that Aga 1 has been defeated.
Oh, right. You do spawn back up on the pyramid. Sorry about that.
Dark Shadow's about to go into his Moldorm fight. SailorNep probably relieved to see just blue bombs as opposed to blue flippers there.
Well, that's Moldorm down for Dark Shadows. Another crystal back on the board. Starting to pull this closer to parity here. That is actually, yeah, tied up on the crystal count.
Yep. And to answer the question in chat, the Ice Rod can be on PED, but it's looking unlikely just based on the fact that we do not have flippers, as Reg has said there.
Well, Dark Shadows having emerged from the Tower of Hera, we'll go to check Spike Cave now. As we will get to see this Ether Medallion. I'm sorry, this Bombos tablet.
Do we get ice out of fire? We do not.
Well, still going to continue playing the game of Go modes. SailorNep still looking. Ice Rod, really the only remaining component as a kind of traditional Ice Rod hunt, you could say. Dark Shadow's not finding it in Spike Cave either.
And it looks like we're going to see the Ice Palace play. SailorNep presumably believing that the flippers at this point have got to be on Mothula.
Looking like it, yeah.
Well, it's
Either
either
that-
flippers on Mothula
Right.
or Ice Rod on Mothula into flippers on Trinex, logically.
Yeah, it's amazing that we have so many different checks to be able to reduce it down to that in our knowledge. Because, I mean, we are, of course, spectators, are able to see all of these things. These two do not have completely overlapping checks with each other, so it may be a minute before this stuff gets discovered. But SailorNep potentially hedging the bet on Mothula having the flippers. Will be taking the fake flipper into Ice Palace, searching for that Ice Rod.
And did not check the shovel spot.
This could be a situation, like you mentioned, though, where conventional logic would have a person thinking, hey, maybe I can save my portal. And as you mentioned, the Aghanim kind of interfering with that. SailorNep might not remember that.
Dark Shadow is getting what he believes is unfortunate information about Bombos, but will be relieved in a couple moments.
You got to think if you're Dark Shadows here, you're expecting to see that Fire Rod as well. Really running out of locations in his side.
Yeah, and once he gets the Fire Rod, though, does he make the same gamble into Turtle Rock without the Ice Rod? I mean, makes logical sense with the density. Or does he, maybe feeling behind, decide Skull Woods will be the play?
You know, that's the thing, is it's a relatively fringe choice to make to go to Skullwoods for that, but I mean, it would, as we know it, unfurl the logic for us. I think I agree with you that he'll probably feel behind and consider that play instead. Not something that I would personally do even if I felt behind, but we've seen Dark Shadows take what we might consider opposing routing strategies over SailorNep all throughout this race.
Right, now with that fire rod and the shovel, menuing for a moment to make a decision, it looks like Turtle Rock is his answer.
Well, we got to see some nifty tech here in Ice Palace from SailorNep, getting to see a nice little stair clip by taking advantage of the fact that ice physics doesn't work the way it probably should. And we slid ourselves into the bottom of that staircase. SailorNep otherwise, though, looking at a relatively low health pool, clearing out the rest of this dungeon, does have powder to work with. But none of those potions are going to refill health.
Oh, and that bee sure isn't going to help with it either.
Piece of heart not quite doing it either. Although if that were a full heart container, that'd be pretty clutch.
So Dark Shadows retracing what we know in Turtle Rock, and SailorNep heading over to the hookshot side.
Yeah, nothing at all stopping us from full clearing this dungeon. SailorNep did a bomb jump for Nice Palace to make the routing maybe a little more friendly, as you can potentially just cross back over with a key and put yourself on the right side of the switches. Finding a full heart container, but not the sink heart. All of these safety finds are potentially one step below where you kind of prefer them to be at this point. And another stair clip? Not quite.
And the good thing with that check is avoiding having to go up the stairs to check the other two chests that inevitably would have just yielded dungeon items, as we now have 2 of our 3 items, with our last one we know being on Cold Stair.
Yeah, so SailorNep, being very cognizant of the Ambrosia mode throughout this race, hasn't really missed a beat in terms of remembering these items.
Tempered Sword, Half Magic, Fire Rod, Bombos, multiple options for dispensing of Cold Stair. We should see a quick fight here.
So, does an icy boss hold an icy weapon for us today? We'll find out here shortly. This tempered fight, pretty comfortable, as you just mentioned, Penguin. Now you can have your song about fire and ice. Nope. It's a Burna.
It's a Burna that leads to a spike cave that we've already checked. So now, gotta go to Moth. Well, for SailorNep, Eastern's looking appealing. There's 4 items for them. They don't know anything about what's in there yet.
Alright, so it looks like the Song of Fire and Ice continues for yet another verse. As we cross over the 90-minute mark of this seed, I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in, and also I highly encourage all of you to follow these 2 runners on their personal Twitch pages. They play this game a lot, run other games I'm sure as well, or if not, just check them out for their strats. There's a link in chat where you can find out a little bit more about these 2. I think they put on a fantastic show for us so far today.
They certainly have, and also another shout out to our wonderful tracker Reg. As I say, the trackers in the Link to the Past community happen to be the offensive linemen of our community, where they get none of the credit but all of the blame when things go where they go. So hop on over to his page, throw him a follow. He's doing a wonderful job clicking those buttons and making sure that we're up to date with what we know.
Having been a guard myself, I really appreciate that metaphor. Yeah, gonna echo that sentiment. Really carrying the team in this front so that we can make sure you and the audience are getting accurate information. Speaking of information, SailorNep finding that final bottle, saying absolutely no way, no sir, no how.
Does not need
flute the
3
heck out of there.
portions of blue green goo.
Look, I mean, what if you have to do a whole lot of tempered spins, you miss torch glitch, and then get singles for the entire fight and miss a few torches?
Few dozen torches?
All I'm saying is that with half magic, there are quite a few. I mean, you could really set the entire pyramid on fire with that kind of ammunition.
Oh, you absolutely could. And SailorNep, remembering the shovel, deciding to go and check that one-off location before making any dive further into a pendant dungeon.
Getting the swag shovel dash for some bombs, but leaving no stones left unturned or blueberries unpicked. Going to grab a bird, and I'm assuming, yeah, no, maybe not going to head to. Oh, we're going to get an Eastern play out of her.
4 items versus the 1 out of Skullwoods at this point. Definitely the better density play. We know it's not going to yield anything for her, but she's not in that scenario just yet.
Yeah, I forgot the SailorNep had not been here earlier in the race, so this is another opportunity for Dark Shadows to kind of start creeping back into this race. Ice Palace would be fast, but there's no guarantee that you can do it fast because we don't have that ice rod just yet.
And while he may make the play in there looking for the ice rod, the same way Nep did, entirely possible he decides Skull Woods, if the flippers are there, maybe hit Swamp Palace and just go with that and then go pull the ped. So he did get the book out of Mimic Cave there, so he'll be able to maybe hit Skullwoods, mirror over, check ped, and then no.
Could this be the mythical all dungeons ice rod ped seed?
I mean, the percentage for it goes up with every check they make.
Yeah, well, Dark Shadow is hoping to potentially preserve a portal as well. Will not be able to, or perhaps just making sure to check. What do we miss? I don't think he's got anything else up here. Oh no, going to Ether Tablet.
He's going to the Ether Tablet now too. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the last remaining check on the mountain for Dark Shadows. I wouldn't be surprised to see an Ice Palace play, but the writing's on the wall that flippers are on Mothula. You know, maybe you just decide to do that anyway and go to Swamp instead.
Yeah. Hit Moth, grab your flippers, check the pedestal. If it's not there, go to Swamp. Hope for the best.
Head to the Winchester and have a pine wait for this all to blow over.
Absolutely. And SailorNep will be basically railroaded into that check in a couple of moments here after they complete their Armos fight.
Yeah, and I think at this point it almost seems like SailorNep is very cognizant of the fact that there must be flippers, you know, either on Mothula or in this particular path. I mean, I think this is an attempt from SailorNep to avoid having to do Mothula at all.
Yeah, because once you get those flippers, your mind's got to start going, something's got to be in Swamp, right? Something's got to be in there. And avoiding that and not needing it is probably where you want to be. Looks like we're going to get the ped check first out of Dark Shadows.
Yeah, I like doing this now just because, I mean, while it is more efficient to do it after Mothula if you're going to. Or maybe he's just going to head to Mothula first.
Either changed his mind or forgot he had the mitts.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel bad about doing it before you commit to going all the way through Skull Woods. Even though there's some time sink involved, if it ends up being, you know, that you didn't need it, you don't necessarily... Or you might think about Mothula differently. Well, that's Armos Nights for SailorNep. We'll turn in the green pendant here shortly. And then she's got not a whole lot of choices left. We'll probably be heading right over to Skull Woods where Dark Shadows is now. However, with the advantage of having finished all of Ice Palace first.
She's about to get her dose of blue disappointment from Sahasrahla.
You'd think we're running out of that yet in this seed.
We seem to just keep running into it. I think it's because there was too much money in the beginning. 300 rupees took up all the bomb slots.
You know, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I certainly don't have any other better explanation for this.
So SailorNep making that play over to the northwest side, gonna hit the Skull Woods area too. We'll have a little bit of a sink here.
Dark Shadows finding out the Gibdos are in the Magic Decanter prize pack today, which is actually really great when you're walking over to Mothula, whether or not you have the Tempered plus boots. It just always feels good to have plenty of magic in this fight.
Oh, for sure. I tend to want to use the Fire Rod more than the sword here anyway.
Well, if you're looking to get a fast kill on this fight, one of the best things that can happen is this particular conveyor pattern doing a dash into the block north of you. Dark Shadow is opting to try and keep him in the center of the arena as best as possible. We'll get a couple of clean slashes in here in a relatively straightforward fight.
And there are the flippers. We knew it had to be that or a mushroom leading to them.
We're even almost out of fetch quests.
That we are. I mean, aside from the fact that we haven't seen the blue boomerang, we're virtually to a 100% inventory.
And for the moment of truth, an hour and 38-ish, almost 39 minutes into the race, we'll finally see what's on this pedestal. Dark Shadows uncovers just cash.
So the ped is dead, but Swamp is now very much alive.
And the crowd goes mild. You've never seen so much disappointment in one seed until that moment. I thought this entire thing had been building up to even more disappointment, but no, this is comedy gold for me.
And Dark Shadow's opting to go into Swamp as opposed to going to Ice. Can't disagree with the play. You get 6 items out of Swamp.
Now, we know that this is the better play in the grand scheme of things. Ice Rod is almost certainly here. I don't think there's anything else that the flippers would have gave us but Ice.
No, because they fake flippered out everything else. Swamp and Ice are the only 2 plays left. Dark Shadows may have opted for Ice first, just in the off chance that it's in there as one of the 3 items. It is a crystal, but the density of Swamp pulling them in.
Now, the decision of how to route Swamp Palace, knowing that there's an item on Argus, it's very unlikely that someone would go to the left side, but if it happens to be in the left side, you wouldn't be fighting the boss at all. So there's still some potential for diversions in how they handle it. Looks like Dark Shadow is going to head into Ice Palace first, though, which I don't blame him
He
for.
juked us. I don't blame him for it at all either. You get the crystal, hopefully you get your Ice Rod, never have to touch Swamp. We just get to sit here with the knowledge that it's the unfortunate play for him.
Well, despite a bit of a high five, SailorNep pulling back into the lead, already having had a crystal over Dark Shadows, but not going neck and neck in Swamp Palace at this point.
It will be interesting to see if Dark Shadows chooses to make that same decision with the chest in the spike room there, of making the check before going up to hit the other ones that are blocked by the hammer.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of runners this week already in the last day or so. Well, there it is. Real early
First
in
chest
Swamp
Swamp. So we have an hour and 41 minutes and about 15 seconds. SailorNep has entered go mode.
That's really rough to see for Dark Shadows, because that was a very, very fast thing to grab, and would have immediately put him into Go Mode Ice Palace. While that wouldn't have necessarily been enough to close the gap, it would have certainly made things a lot closer.
Absolutely. Because at that point it becomes, do you go left or do you go right in GT?
All right, we got Turtle Rock left, and then I almost got into the GT game real quick.
We are at about that normal time frame for it. I don't blame you.
Well, we may have done everything in Turtle Rock, but we do have to go all the way back through one more time for Try Next.
Well, the tour was nice. We'll get it again.
Dark Shadows with a very efficient one-attempt bomb jump here in Ice Palace should set him up for a nice, easy clear of the whole dungeon.
Just a bit unfortunate that he's going to make that full clear. Ice Palace is always one of the ones you want to, I think, just behind Swamp Palace, probably, the one you want to be able to go mode the most.
Yeah, it's really the best feeling dungeon to do fast, and we got to see another stair clip attempt, this time from Dark Shadows. End up sliding just over the top of the railing, but definitely some cool tech. I'm glad to see both runners go for that.
I think if I ever hit that, it was on accident.
You know, there's a lot of different ways to do these rooms, and for those of you out there who want to work on your individual rooms, there's actually a really great page called the it's like the Stat Hub or the Strat Hub. Uh, you can find on the vanilla Link to the Past Discord, where people record the room times for every individual room, usually in the NMG route, category thing. But you can find several different strats for the same thing, and it's a great way to try and pad out, your repertoire for what you feel comfortable with using item-wise in any given situation.
Dark Shadow's electing to go up into the hammer room. Gonna waste himself a little bit of time here. Not gonna find an item.
SailorNep avoiding minor trouble here with these Hokoboku and rollers.
Yeah, definitely can't blame Dark Shadows for the thoroughness of the check, though. You're one item from go mode. You definitely don't want to leave any chest behind.
Yeah, and I think this thoroughness, while it makes a lot of sense, and like you said, you can't blame him, is only going to make him feel that much more worse when he gets to Swamp Palace.
Oh, for sure. Especially with given that first chest. Nep now about to make the trek into the Trinex room area, opening that last locked door.
Getting a really nice cane dash throughout the peg puzzle room on the way to Trinex. In a pretty comfortable position overall with Tempered Sword and all of the right equips. This should be a pretty straightforward fight, hopefully.
Yeah, only thing that would make it a little bit better would be that butter sword, but still going up, getting that backside attack.
I was actually surprised to see a fourth slash before the second ice rod. I thought you could only get 3.
I think just based on the positioning, that was the only way you could do it there.
From like the knockback.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's about as textbook as I've seen it, at least since the book club that we destroyed over in Mimic Cave. Now that we're leaving this region, and I guess we're a confirmed felon, we're going to take those 10 arrows and book it, because we're heading to the tower. So, Penguin, there's a game we like to play, isn't there?
There is, and the bot horde has just started. We have 22 locations in the Ganon's Tower basement where we can find our big key. Go ahead and throw your guesses in chat as to which chest SailorNep will be opening that will contain it. And we will stop the game as soon as they enter the tower. The winner of the game will get points on the leaderboard based on the number of people guessing, and anybody after the individual who gets it first will get some bonus points.
Well, I always have been a fan of Bob. That would be traditionally number 14, based on, like, I guess, archaic routing these days. Where do you think we're going to find it today, Penguin?
I always pick number 17. It doesn't matter what the route is, 17 is my number.
Sticking to your guns, I can respect that.
Always. Alright, so we will have 31 points to be awarded to the winner. SailorNep opting to go left side first. Good luck, everybody.
It is not the torch today, just 20 bucks on that, on top of the flames there. We're not going to bother to bash those off of the torch. We're just going to take that hammer and smack for a key and head west. It looks like Stalfos room. Next, will we opt to kill them all, or shall we mirror out of here? We'll find out here shortly from SailorNep in the items.
Looking like a mirror as we popped right to it. We got map in 2, key in 3, 20 bucks in 4, 50 bucks in 5. Heading right side for some of that Dark Magician strat.
Well, as SailorNep continues these chests, we'll also get to see Dark Shadows heading into Swamp for Go mode here.
We got 6 is a small key, 7 was just bombs. As we see the bomb going off, it's going to lead to that ice rod for Dark Shadow.
These two have full inventory screens. You'll love to see every Y item.
But ironically, no silvers just yet.
Yeah, no silvers, no bow, or not bow, I mean mushroom. Did we ever get the bug nut?
I don't believe so. Probably get it out again in his tower if the big T is deep enough.
It looks like we did. I just don't remember seeing it.
I don't either.
Alright, I may have made you lose count here.
I believe that was chest number 11.
Confirmation streaming in from chat. Chest number 11, the big key today. And a big congratulations to Andy Montana winning the big key guessing game. An assortment of other players also getting 5 points each. So good job, you guessed the number. Let's watch this Gans Tower gauntlet climb here from SailorNep. She's in a good position to complete the rest of this with ample ammo and decent health to work with. More magic than you could ever hope for.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to see any of the chests opened up top in hopes of silver arrows or a butter sword. Definitely execution-wise, very capable of pulling off just a tempered sword Ganon without much of an issue at all.
And cruising on through Ganonball GT, as I like to call it, SailorNep actually going to skip the restock room. And we'll be doing the rest of this without any extra health, it looks like, unless we decide to powder at the top.
Meanwhile, Dark Shadows is making his second tour of Turtle Rock. At this point in the game, with the last locationing of the ice rod, you gotta think both runners are probably glancing over at their IRC every few seconds to see if the other one's hit that dot done yet.
Though I have to imagine right now SailorNep feeling the anxiety quite a lot more than Dark Shadows, at least until Dark gets into GT, if that happens to be before the end of the Ganon fight.
Oh, for sure.
No silvers in sight, so it should be a relatively straightforward Ganon fight. If we didn't have so much magic, that might be a factor, but we could refill a potion here and still deplete it all and then refill again in the middle of the fight and be fine.
That we could, and Nep deciding that the fairy was worth grabbing off of the whiz robes there, so plenty of health to get through the rest of this.
It also was considerably faster than, grabbing the restock room, so that was a pretty handy place to grab one. Torches 1 being done with Fire Rod, as we are replete with magic, as I mentioned before. Dark Shadows almost all the way to the laser bridge here. Could skip it and will actually, so there's a little bit of time saved there. Not that I think that's going to be enough of a factor here to climb the whole tower in a matter of seconds.
No, there needs to be a colossal mistake made on the part of SailorNep at this point, I think, for the race to swing over towards Dark Shadow's favor, unfortunately. And having picked up that fairy off the Wizrobes, opting not to powder, fills up the magic, though, before Moldorm 2.
Also, shout outs to Reg and Chad, our tracker, for correcting me. We already double dipped This was a double dip with Turtle Rock. Dark Shadows definitely did Laser Bridge. But that'll be Moldorm 2 down for SailorNep. Gonna opt to check that last chest just in case those silvers are there. Will not need them though. SailorNep heading to the Aghanim 2 fight as Dark Shadows is approaching the end of this fight and the beginning of GT.
Dark Shadows also with the clean Trinex fight there. Gonna collect that 7th crystal here as we get Aga 2. Should be a triple, might have been a double based on the hits though.
Yeah, the aim was sublime either way though. So we'll find out here in this third phase, presuming we get at least 2 of them. Yeah, so that was a triple. That's amazing.
I'm not sure though, because the last one there, 2 hit at almost the same time too.
I want to say because I only saw 1 knockback.
That's fair. I'm fairly confident though that if the first 2 both hit at the same time and we needed the 3rd one, it was going to hit anyway.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that was a really excellently planned out fight there. I mean, you could see it from SailorNep that there was another triple coming if somehow we didn't have already only 1 or 2 remaining.
Yeah. If we didn't see a blue ball in that second one, probably would have just been a 3-3.
Well, we're gonna hopefully see a 1+1 cycle here from SailorNep. First cycle being done in with 12 slashes pretty efficiently. Well, the equivalent of slashes and spins at least. And with the use of the hook shot, looks like we got another 12 here for phase 2. Very nicely done.
Usually something you see very frequently with the butter sword. Not all that often with the tempered. Having to get that spin off the trident to really make it the most effective it can be. Clearly, SailorNep has done this a few times.
Well, she's in a commanding position to wrap up this seed sub 2. Looking at phase 4, getting a free spin on the first warp and using the lamp for the torch glitch. So we have a little bit of flexibility here if we miss a triple.
That we do, and Dark Shadows gambling on tile room. I think that gives a clear indication of where he feels he is in the ring.
And understandable so. Knowing that you're probably not going to sub 2 at this point just because of the tower climb itself and the fight, you would assume that your opponent's pretty close to done here.
Oh, for sure. Despite the trolliness of the items, these 2 both are very quality runners, so anything over 2 for either of them has got to make them feel like they're in very far behind. Probably shocked to have not seen a dot done to this point.
Well, major shoutouts for SailorNep. She just pulled off a cape spin to secure that final cycle. Had this been close enough race for that to be necessary, that would have been like a really clutch way to finish out the fight. So I'm real excited about that. We'll finish an official SRL time of 1 hour, 55 minutes, and 20 seconds. Get your GGs in chats, folks. In chat, folks.
And while SailorNep collects their Triforce, we'll see Dark Shadows make his way through the tower here. Having finished the tower room and continuing his way right, grabbing that big key. Now without silvers here, gonna go ahead and make his way to the gauntlet. And did point out the silvers were in the tower, so probably just an unfortunate route for being able to get them, but again, Dark having Tempered Sword won't have a problem with the Ganon fight either, I don't think.
And we are joined by the victor of the race today, SailorNep. Congratulations, GG.
Thanks very much. The seed was definitely something else. It gave me something to sweat every step of the way. For example, during the Aga fight, I figured it's very, very likely Aga seed. It would be a twist if it wasn't at this point. But I hadn't full cleared Light World. So when that huge blue ball came out, I think it was 9 blue balls, I was just like, oh, if somehow there's Glove and Hammer in Eastern, I am just stick a fork in me, I'm done.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because that ended up being one of the early game divergences between the two of you. Dark Shadows opting to try and, find both of those things in Eastern Palace, and that ended up being a really rewarding decision to make going to Aghanim, even though, as you mentioned, all 10 blue balls, not very fun to deal with.
Yeah, and then just the whole path to the ice rod. I was feeling good when I decided, just because I was running low on spots after Thieves Town, that I'm just like, okay, I'm going north. I'm gonna go into the front of Skullwoods. I can only at most get one item, but otherwise, when am I coming back? I found the Cane of Samaria, and I thought, that's great, because that doesn't immediately unlock anything for me. So maybe someone last locations this. But then, when the flippers ended up being in Skullwoods, I thought, well, if someone decided to put that off and last location it, they would end up getting the flippers a lot sooner because they'd come with the fire rod later, and they would do the boss first because of the guaranteed item. So I'm like, am I like about even, or am I way behind?
Yeah, certainly a relatable feeling. All throughout this race, we were trying to guess just what was going on in both of your minds, just because of how many weird scenarios you had to kind of deal with the Ambrosia settings. And boss is not that productive for us today, it seems like. I mean, I don't think we found any required items on any of them.
I think Mothula was our only one with the quasi-required... Well, actually, they were required because of Swamp Palace having the Ice Rod. Mothula was our only progressive item on a boss, I believe. And Dark Shadows did find the silvers in the top area of GT here.
Well, that's pretty interesting, although all things considered, your silverless Ganon fight was exceptional, SailorNep. I saw that cave spin in that last cycle, by the way. Very nicely done.
Thanks. I was like, I'm gonna go for this and hope it works. I did go for the lamp strap just to be safe. I think if this were like a total 1v1 where there are no teams, I would have gone for the swag with the fire rod, but I actually did miss that last week, so I'm like, I'm gonna play it safe here and just make sure I use the...
Hey, getting a free spin wasn't even necessary. Well, actually, it was necessary in the grand scheme of things. I think you finished it with a triple.
Yeah, I got 4 sets of triples thanks to the early spin.
Well, so this victory today should put you at the top of the Pyramid of Power division with your teammates. That puts your team to 2-1. Did you run last week?
Yes, I was in last week. I took a win over... sorry, I'm spacing. I guess I'm a little worn out from the seed. My opponent was I Am the Short.
Well, it sounds like you're putting the power in the pyramid of this team. I mean, that's 2 wins to your name.
And I'll be likely on for Randomizer next week, so I'm hoping to make it 3. Actually, right now, my other teammate, Dante, is actively racing in our other race for this week, so I'm looking forward to finding out what happened with...
That's exciting, and that would be an opportunity for the Titans mitts to jump to the top of the pyramid, it seems like, for now at least. There is still, as you mentioned, Randomizer next week. Well, definitely really happy to see the performance out of the two of you today. Dark Shadows right now actually walking into the Ganon fight will be a tempered silver fight, so it should be just a little bit faster overall. However, did not one cycle the first phase, so there will be some time lost exchange there. So SailorNep, when do you know who your next week opponent is, or have you already sorted that out?
We haven't discussed that in advance yet. I'm guessing when the other team feels out which 2 runners they want to put forward, we'll be able to talk about it.
So, has your team kind of figured out your entire schedule out through week 7, or are you guys going week by week deciding what's going on and where people fit?
We've got a general idea of what we're going to do. We have left a little room for flexibility in case someone maybe has some schedule issues or something. But we've all made our preferences as to what we would prefer to play clear. So that should be good. And we're all gonna kind of work together on like the pilot week.
Yeah, the pilot week one looks like it's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it myself. As we were speaking now, just now actually on the restream, Dark Shadows finishing up in second place time of 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 27 seconds. We'll see if we can get him in here for an interview as well.
Well, with that, I think I'm actually going to step off and just enjoy listening to the rest. But thanks so much for having me, and good luck to Team Beer Force One in the weeks to come.
Thank you for joining us, and congratulations on your victory, and hope you have fun next week.
Well, something of a baton pass. We are joined by DarkShadows59. GG.
Oh, that seed.
Yeah, that one had you guys chasing that ice rod for a very long time.
Yeah, I thought about chasing that book to Bombos, but apparently I didn't need to.
So, walk us through some of the decisions you had in the early game there with going over to Eastern when there were just the two items without the bow, because you were the one that checked the Lumberjack Cave. SailorNep actually had not done so prior to doing Aga.
I thought there was a possibility that the other bow was over there. Because yes, boots were over in pod, but like even then, you had the one item on the pyramid. You had the four items in pod, so you had 5 items if you beat Aga, but you also had 5 items if you didn't beat Aga. So there was possibly a way around, at least for a little bit.
So one thing I wanted to probe your mind about was the whole Mothula gambit, because like it came down to later in the race that it pretty much seemed like the writing on the wall was that flippers were at Mothula. How'd you feel about that as you were starting to head towards it? The opportunity to check the pedestal before we saw you kind of like juke the pedestal and then choose to do Mothula. Was that just kind of like remembering it?
Yeah, initially I was thinking check the ped, and then I realized, you know what? If I'm going to check the ped, I might as well do the other thing that's at the ped. So that's when I decided, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do Mothula.
I gotta imagine there was at least a little bit of a sigh of relief when the ped turned out to not be the ice rod.
I almost would have rather the ped have been the ice rod.
Yeah, I think that would have been something that would have given you a little bit more of an edge towards kind of like, catching up to some of SailorNep's decisions earlier in the race. As you kind of had more progress and more opportunity to kind of finish those dungeons than to kind of make up the time on the crystal dungeons that you'd put off before. But I mean, sometimes the game just randomizes that way. It's just how it is. I think both of you guys put on a great performance today. And you're not the only ones on the teams, on your teams playing. It turns out we found out from SailorNep, although I probably could have paid more attention to the schedule, that both your teammates are actually racing right now. So I'm sure you're excited about that, but what does this spell for your schedule going forward? Have you discussed, what other weeks you might be racing?
We have a pretty good idea for the next few weeks, but I don't think I want to reveal that yet.
Fair enough. Absolutely within reason. Although I think, having seen what the two of you guys put on today, I think everybody's going to have a little bit closer of an eye on the Pyramid of Power division. We saw, despite some pretty annoying stuff happening in this seed, some really good gameplay in the grand scheme of things.
So, looking ahead to the next weeks, though, is there a specific week that you are looking forward to most?
I'm probably looking forward more toward the next 2 weeks, actually. Randomizer week and mystery week.
Yeah, I think very few people are probably going to be very well prepared for Mystery Week. There are some folks out there who have been participating in mystery tournaments and doing mystery races here and there, but I mean, if you throw the whole randomized principle into the settings itself as well, who even knows?
Yeah, Mystery Week definitely could shape up to be one of the more interesting ones. I see a lot of people practicing Mystery specifically because they hadn't done much of it previously.
Well, speaking of less commonly practiced things, and I've been making a habit to ask everybody on mic this. Have you had any opportunity yet to practice the co-op stuff, both the pilot seeds and the actual info share?
Not as much pilot, but co-op definitely. We've had quite a lot of co-op practice. Um, in fact, 2 of us had to face off in a co-op tournament. So yeah, that's a thing.
Well, then you might be pretty well informed as to what the other might do, those things considered. And of course, you'll be able to talk to each other. That's the other fun aspect of this. Um, I really do think that this league format does provide us a lot of opportunity to round out our skill kits.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun working with people instead of just being in your own little box.
Oh, I meant to ask you before, did you race in week 1?
I did not.
Okay, so SailorNep raced in last week. You haven't raced in last week. I'm trying to get like a mental math going in my mind for which weeks we should probably expect you, because yeah, we do need at least 4 per team member. So you mentioned the next 2 being interesting. I hope we get to see you for these.
I'd call it a high probability.
Maybe more or less likely than finding a boss where you'd expect it to be for next week.
Hey, next week I'm just hoping I have ice rods before I find Trinexes.
All right, you're gonna find out Uncle confirmed. I'm doing my witching now.
That would be a far too nice randomizer seat, I think.
Yeah, I'd be a lot less concerned than normal.
Absolutely. But speaking of bosses and things of that, with regards to this specific race, did you find any solace in the fact that you got really no good progression items off the bosses as you ran through the dungeons?
I would have rather had progression on the bosses.
I figured that. It was kind of a sarcastic question. I'm sorry.
I mean, I kind of felt good when I found that Red Cane in Skull Woods early, and then it kind of started petering off.
Yeah, you actually did go into Skullwoods first and find the Red Cane, and when you did, we did talk about the fact that if SailorNep decided to continue with more of a southern route, that would give you a definitive edge there. And then she turned around and went right up there after she finished up with something.
Yeah, and how about those green bottles? You had a couple of those, maybe even a few.
I chugged one. I still had 2 left.
No, just in case you decided to like never go to a Spiral Cave.
Yeah, I wish I could have leveraged them better, but like, there's only really one point where I needed to use one.
Yeah, it was just funny. 1 wasn't good enough, 2 wasn't good enough, and then the 3rd one we're all kind of laughing. SailorNep dodged it entirely. A catfish just said nope. All right, well, I don't want to keep you forever. You do have a teammate to watch and an opponent to scout out for playoffs, maybe. So just to do a little bit of tying up business on our end, there is a lot of A Link to the Past Randomizer League going on tonight and going forward for the rest of the week. 64 matches every week for the next 6 weeks, and then playoffs. Goodness gracious. But tonight, right now, we have 2 races going on right now. Beard Force 1, which is Dark Shadows' team with unknown availability, up against the Titans Mitts, SailorNep's team with Dante. That's on SG right now. We also have another race on SG4. We have one that started just a little bit ago in SG5. We should have one that just started on the ALTTPR League as well, and a handful of other ones to finish off the night. Follow all these channels, take a look at them. There's lots more Zelda action ahead. I've been Uday Monistic, joined today by Irritable Penguin. You want to go ahead and sign us off?
Sure, and I'll just echo the idea of we have a ton of races coming up, not just today, but throughout this week and the next 6, all across the SpeedGaming network and that ALTTPR League channel set. That one there is new specifically for the league. Make sure you're following that one. There's 4 of them in total. They all start with the ALTTPR League. There's the base one, and then 2 through 4. So SpeedGaming base, then 2 through 6. The ALTTPR League base, and then 2 through 4 will get you pretty much every race we're going to be able to put on for a restream. Last week we somehow managed to get over 50 of the 64 races restreamed, and just based on the enthusiasm that we're seeing out of the people who are gracious enough to be doing the tracking and the commentary and the restreaming, we're still aiming to get at least that number every week. So this is going to be a whole lot of fun over these next few weeks. So with all that said, thank you all very much for watching, and we hope you have a wonderful night.
See ya.